Hey everyone and welcome back. So, it's roundup time. Valve have pulled an EA and they've actually cancelled their rebuild of Artifact, but they've actually been pretty cool about how they've done it. Now all of that while the Avengers continues to fall over, and then some really sad news because one of the best gaming services has shut down. Of course, plus more and also some loot because it's March, and if you'd like a bow pin to go along with the sweet sword and shield from the last few months, plus of course sticker and the art and things like behind the scenes videos, then you can check out the Patreon. The support is super appreciated. Working on some pretty sweet things we'll be able to show very, very soon. And with that said, let's go. Okay, so Valve have actually halted development on Artifact version 2. Now, Artifact launched in 2018, but it didn't catch on, especially with its launch monetization. Well, updates were suspended in early 19, and then, a year later, March 2020, they announced Artifact 2.0, complete with loads of requested changes from players and all that stuff, and it kicked off beta last May, and it didn't go that well because Valve have pulled the plug. Now, they've said that they're reasonably happy with the progress the actual game has made, but basically, and this should be no surprise to any of us, the active player count was just too small to justify development. Now, is that the story over? No, turns out it's not, because Valve have actually decided to release Artifact Classic and Artifact 2, renamed to Artifact Foundry, for free. And that's actually with the monetization stripped out of Classic, so totally free, and if you are somebody who paid, then you can get these like collector's edition cards. Now, as for Foundry, well, it's not done polish-wise, but the core game is actually there. And that's it. No updates, no nothing, but they are just out there in the wild for free. And to be honest with you, there's not much to analyze here. We all know why the game didn't do that well, but it's nice that Valve have just put it all out there for free. A little bit better than it going to the graveyard. Speaking of things that may end up in the graveyard, Avengers, because one live service that has not been cancelled yet, but is struggling, is Marvel's Avengers. Now, it does have an opportunity. The next-gen console edition is launching March 18th, and to match that date, they've nerfed XP gains. Now, the explanation from the devs here is that they believed that the super quick level ups and the really rapid XP could just confuse players because each level would require the same amount of XP, and that would lead to pacing issues where you could basically level up so fast that your various skill points would come in so fast that it would be confusing and overwhelming. Now, they've made it so that the higher XP requirements only kick in after level 25, so I guess new players will still be overwhelmed. Unsurprisingly, this whole thing has just caused confusion. A whole bunch of players are kind of just rejecting the developer's response and explanation, thinking that they're really just trying to extend the character level up grind. Now, the follow-up post from Crystal Dynamics just explained a little bit more of, what I'd said there, and I actually agree with what they said to an extent, but whatever the devs' reasoning is, making it more grindy after the fact with really no positives to counteract that is a rough change for what looks to be an extremely, extremely struggling game. I guess the question is, will they stick with this game or not? Because from what I understand, it was extremely expensive to develop, and the initial sales were pretty decent actually, especially in the PS4, but it was bloody expensive to make, and if the player retention numbers are awful, then it's hard to see a viable future for this one.
This is Shadow.
And now we've got our sad news for the day because it looks like one of our best streaming services is going bust, and this actually was good. So Shadow is a streaming service that would basically let you rent a high-end PC over the internet and install whatever you wanted on it. Yeah, that beats the hell out of the libraries of Stadia and Luna. Now, it was originally $34.95 a month, which was pretty damn pricey, but they added in an $11.99 a month tier that would get you a GTX 1080 rig, so that's great for most gaming. And now, if you've got great internet, but you don't have a great rig, it is a steal, right? Sounds great. Sadly, the dev has actually filed for bankruptcy in the US and have been placed into receivership in France, which sucks. Basically, their service provider, SCRSI, wants to reclaim €30 million worth of servers. Now, of course, that hardware, given the current, GPU semiconductor shortage, that could be worth quite a bit. And that's part of the trouble. Basically, Shadow were completely overwhelmed by demand during the pandemic to the point where they couldn't scale their business fast enough. In a way, a victim of their own success. But that could be okay because they're actually right now seeking investment to clear their debt to CRSI. So who knows, right? I mean, the demand clearly does show market interest. Now, for me, I could always just run Parsec on my home machine, but for many people who don't have a beefy home machine, something like Shadow is really awesome. So here's to hoping. I really want this one to pull through.
A new chapter has begun.
And next, Microsoft time, because the EU have approved their purchase of Bethesda. Yep, now combo that with the US SEC approving it, and we're actually getting a bit closer to the deal being done, and that's when we'll probably start to hear the companies talk more about it. Then elsewhere, this is a bit of a side thing, but the Chromium version of Microsoft Edge is on testing for Xbox. And that could mean you could run like GeForce Now and Stadia and any other web app on your Xbox. Now the Xbox has got keyboard support. So if that browser then had mouse support, do you essentially have a Chromebook-like situation? Now, I'm not saying that this means you could replace your desktop, but a bit of flexibility would be kind of neat. Remember those Linux PS3s? So, kind of neat. Now, speaking of games, nothing to announce in terms of specifics, but apparently there are actually games releasing this year that have not been announced yet, and that was based on one of their bigwigs on a podcast. So, I guess expect an announcement. Bit of Nintendo then, because Switch Pro rumors have been around for ages, and I'd say that's the only Switch I'd be interested in personally, and based on Bloomberg's report, it's the same form factor, but a 7-inch OLED that is 720p handheld, which I think is fine for a 7-inch screen, and then 4K when docked. That's a 4K output. I massively doubt 4K games. Maybe it could output UI and such as 4K, and the actual game, that could be checkerboard rendered or something, but who knows. Now, overall, Nintendo have said the Switch is not near end of life yet, but they recently had their president say that business can nosedive halfway into a console's life, and they want to avoid that. So I guess do a Switch Pro, because I suppose that did actually work for Sony and Microsoft when it came to extending the previous gen. And there you go. That is the news. Honestly, there's not much in terms of super awesome headlines. That's why, part of why we haven't had as many videos up. But by this stage, we felt like enough stories had accumulated that it was time to go do a roundup episode. Of course, we're all hard at work on evergreen content. We have one very, very large video that is now finished a script, and another pretty damn large video that is well into production. So I'm looking forward to filling you in on all of that in due course. But that's it for me. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.